Welcome. Today, we are diving deep into a fascinating medical mystery. We're talking about a kind of pain that sends mixed signals all through your body, making you think the problem is in one spot when it's actually hiding somewhere else entirely. Let's get right into it.
So picture this. You've got this annoying, persistent tingling or numbness in your hand. Your first thought? Something's wrong with my wrist. That's natural. But what if the real culprit is actually lurking way further up your arm, maybe in your elbow or even your shoulder? Turns out this is way more common than you'd think.
So, to really solve this mystery, we first have to understand the basic mechanics behind that tingling feeling itself. Where does it come from?
Well, it's a condition called nerve entrapment. And the best way to think about it is to picture a garden hose. When everything's working right, water, or in this case information, flows through it perfectly. But if you get a kink in that hose, the flow gets disrupted. For a nerve, that disruption shows up as pain, numbness, and yeah, that annoying tingling.
Now, the most famous, the absolute poster child for nerve entrapment, and a perfect place for us to start is, of course, carpal tunnel syndrome.
So with carpal tunnel, what's happening is the median nerve is getting pinched inside this really narrow passageway in your wrist. This thing affects millions of people, especially women and older adults. And the risk factors, they're everywhere. We're talking jobs with repetitive motions like typing all day, or even things like pregnancy and diabetes.
But here it is. This is the big question. Is the wrist the only place a nerve can get in trouble? And as you're about to see, the answer is a huge, resounding no. See, those nerves travel a long way from your spine all the way to your fingertips, and there are a bunch of places they can get snagged along the way.
So let's take a quick little tour of the arm's other potential pinch points, the danger zones where our nerve hoses are most likely to get kinked up. Our first stop, and this one's a bit of a surprise for a lot of people, is the shoulder.
Yeah, deep inside the shoulder, there's a nerve called the suprascapular nerve, and it has to pass through a couple of really tight, bony notches on your shoulder blade. Now, if it gets squeezed at that first notch, it can cause weakness when you lift your arm and when you try to rotate it outward. But if the pinch happens a little further down at that second notch, it might only affect your outward rotation. You see this all the time in athletes who do a lot of overhead stuff. Think pitchers, volleyball players.
Okay, let's keep moving down the arm. Our next stop, which can also be a major part of the problem, is the elbow.
And this is the home of the second most common nerve entrapment in the entire arm, cubital tunnel syndrome. This happens when the ulnar nerve, yep, that's the one that gives you that crazy funny bone zinging feeling, gets compressed in that little groove on the inside of your elbow.
Now get this, because this part is wild. Just bending your elbow can actually shrink the space in that tunnel by more than half, a 55% reduction, and it stretches the nerve at the same time. Just imagine doing that over and over again, or maybe holding your elbow bent while you sleep at night. That is a ton of stress on that one little nerve.
And that brings us to our final stop on the tour, right back where we started, the wrist. But now, we're going to see it in a completely new light. Because, as it turns out, the wrist isn't just a one-tunnel town. It actually has two major nerve tunnels. We already know the median nerve goes through the carpal tunnel, but that ulnar nerve, the same one from our funny bone, it passes through its own separate channel called Guyon's canal. This means you can have two totally different nerve problems happening in the exact same wrist.
Okay, so we've got all these different potential pinch points, right? The shoulder, the elbow, the wrist. But what happens when they start to work together? This is where our story takes a really fascinating and crucial turn.
This is the question that unlocks this whole thing. It's a game changer. What if a nerve isn't just dealing with one problem, but two?
And that brings us to double crush syndrome. The theory itself has been around since 1973, and it's actually brilliantly simple. It basically says that a pinch on a nerve higher up the arm, what doctors call proximal, doesn't just cause a problem right there. It weakens the entire nerve downstream, making it way more likely to be affected by a second pinch somewhere else, further down or distally, like at the wrist. It's a 1-2 punch.
I love this because it perfectly illustrates the domino effect. So that first compression, the one up high, it's like knocking over the first domino. It messes with the nerve's health, it slows down the flow of nutrients. This makes the whole nerve fragile. Then, a second, even minor compression further down the line, one that might not have even caused you any trouble on its own, is now enough to topple that next domino and trigger some major problems.
So, if the symptoms in your hand could be coming from your wrist, or your elbow, or both, how in the world do doctors solve this nerve mystery? Well, they mainly use two tools. First, you have nerve conduction studies, or NCS. Think of this like checking the data speed on your internet cable. It measures how fast and how well electrical signals are zipping through the nerve. Then you have ultrasound. This is more like sending a technician out to actually look at the cable. It gives doctors a direct visual of the nerve so they can see things like swelling or maybe a cyst that's physically squishing it.
And you know what? Both of these tests are really good. You can see the data here. Ultrasound is technically a little more sensitive and specific, but it's not a huge difference. The real challenge, the tricky part in a double crush case, is that if a doctor only uses these powerful tools to look at your wrist, they could completely miss that first crush that's happening up at the elbow or the shoulder. And that can lead to the wrong diagnosis, or even worse, a treatment that only solves half the problem.
So once you have the full picture, how do you fix this nerve traffic jam? And what is the big takeaway for all of us here?
Well, treatment runs the whole spectrum. It can start with really simple things like just learning about better posture, wearing a splint at night to keep your wrist straight, or doing these special nerve gliding exercises. If it's something like a cyst, a doctor might use an ultrasound to guide a tiny needle in there and drain it. And then for more serious cases, you have surgery, which can decompress the nerve by just releasing the tight ligament that's on top of it, or even transpose it. That's where they physically move the nerve to a new spot where it has more room to breathe.
But listen, no matter the treatment, the key takeaway, the most important thing to remember is this. Your body is an amazingly interconnected system. A pinch in your shoulder can make your whole arm vulnerable. That tingling in your fingers, it could be a message from your wrist, your elbow, your shoulder, or maybe all three at once. The source of the pain isn't always where you feel the symptoms.
It's just a powerful reminder to really listen to what our bodies are telling us, and to always ask, what if the story here is a little more complex than it first seems? It makes you wonder, right? Is it possible your body is sending you mixed signals too?